Right now it's like 9:30 in the morning, currently on Wednesday, at least in Pacific time. I'm from LA, and it's been a wild Wednesday so far, ladies and gentlemen. Not only has Phil Jackson been fired, but on top of that, we just found out that Chris Paul has been traded. So how are you guys doing? FlightMike here, back again with another NBA video, and what the hell is going on? Chris Paul just got traded for Sam Dekker, Lou Williams, Patrick Beverley, and a 2018 first-round pick. And honestly, I'm not sure what I think of it. I don't know if this is a game-changing move or a science experiment that could go terribly wrong. So before we get started, be sure to subscribe if you guys like NBA content. I'm going to be bringing you guys daily NBA content constantly, and if you're a huge NBA fan and you love discussing the NBA, be sure to subscribe, and if you're already subscribed, be sure to hit that notification bell. The NBA offseason has been insane, and we haven't even reached free agency yet. We will be covering all of the latest moves, all of the wash bombs, and of course all of the biggest free agency acquisitions. And without further ado, let's get straight to the analysis. Assuming that the commissioner doesn't get in between this trade and veto it, and by the way, cue all of the Laker fans that are going to be making veto jokes on the internet, this trade intrigues me. To start, we're going to look at this from the Los Angeles Clippers perspective. If you are a Clipper fan, then you will have to agree that the core of Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, JJ Redick, and Chris Paul was not built to dominate the NBA era today. It may have been able to dominate the NBA 7 years ago, but definitely not today, which is unfortunate because this core was beginning to be put together around 2009. Blake Griffin was drafted in 2009, which was way before the NBA shifted into the three-point slinging, high-paced NBA that it is today. This makes players like DeAndre Jordan, who cannot shoot but provide excellent defense and offensive liability, because big men nowadays are not only expected to shoot the mid-range jumper, but they are ideally expected to be able to hit the three-point jumper to space out the floor. With this in mind, the Los Angeles Clippers were practically stuck in NBA purgatory in the sense that they would consistently make the playoffs, yet they were not able to ever finish past the second round. Now there were opportunities. Don't get me wrong, not too long ago, the Clippers had an opportunity to beat the Houston Rockets and advance to the conference finals, but that didn't happen. In fact, you can make an argument that they choked this opportunity and injuries plagued them for the rest of their opportunities. However, in the NBA today, as good as Chris Paul is, above average to great point guards have never been difficult to come by. But the reason this trade is so good for the Los Angeles Clippers is because it does not make sense to invest so much to an outdated core in the hopes that they make an NBA Finals appearance. It makes more sense to trade Chris Paul for something, let him go, and compete with an NBA MVP candidate and focus on rebuilding your core. This is especially a great insurance policy because now if Blake Griffin leaves, they are no longer as invested in the core of today and can focus on a rebuild while receiving assets in the form of Sam Dekker, Patrick Beverley, Lou Williams, and a 2018 pick rather than nothing at all. Remember, Clipper fans, Chris Paul is a free agent and he could have just left. You at the very least received a promising young player, an effective volume scorer, and a defensive stud to go with a future first-round pick. At least you got something. Now, looking at this from the Houston Rockets perspective, I'm actually intrigued. For one, at the beginning of the year, the Houston Rockets moved James Harden to the point guard position, and he thrived, making himself a NBA MVP candidate that averaged double-digit assists and double-digit points on practically a nightly basis. In fact, in any other normal year, that there wasn't some psychopath named Russell Westbrook averaging a triple-double and scoring 57 points on some nights with that triple-double, then without a doubt, James Harden would have been the MVP this year. So I guess you could say that James Harden just got a little unlucky. James Harden and Mike D'Antoni were a match made in heaven and built a team to compete with the modern pace and space NBA despite having lost Dwight Howard. In fact, Mike D'Antoni's effect on the Rockets was so great that he won Coach of the Year this year for it. whereas James Harden came in at second place this year for MVP voting. Now my next question is, what's next? At the first thought of this trade, two things entered my mind. One, can James Harden and CP3 coexist? You're pretty much adding an all-star point guard to a team that has a MVP candidate at point guard. James Harden already dominates with the ball in his hands, and if I was the Houston Rockets, I would want him to continue the point guard duties. There is a way to solve this, however. One is running specific schemes and figuring out how to use CP3 and James Harden at the same time, which is more Mike D'Antoni's job than our job to figure out. Two is using CP3 as a playmaker only once James Harden goes to the bench to continue the excellent ball distribution that is required for Mike D'Antoni's offense to be successful. The second thing that came into my mind when I first saw this trade was, isn't CP3 too old for this to work out? Well, Chris Paul is 32, and Mike D'Antoni's offense requires you to be in excellent shape and quick due to the excessive running to control the pace in his games. Well, if we look at another point guard that Mike D'Antoni coached when he was 32, Steve Nash, we found out that Steve Nash had an MVP season at Chris Paul's age, all thanks to the scheme Mike D'Antoni put him in. Which is why I have absolutely no doubt that CP3 will make a great fit for the Houston Rockets, being able to find the wide open man, running the pick and roll to perfection, and being able to hit the wide open three and create for himself when needed. Whenever James Harden isn't taking things seriously enough, he'll have Chris Paul to calm him down, and that's what makes this combo so brilliant. Because at the end of the day, these two players complement each other perfectly and should make the Houston Rockets a serious contender in the West. Now that they acquired Chris Paul, let's see what the Houston Rockets can do in free agency to surround these two with talent. This trade could not have come at a better time, as free agency begins this Saturday and the hype surrounding the Houston Rockets is real.